Yeah. All right, great. All right, thanks everyone. Welcome. Neko, I signed you up to tell a story. Neko, Anna, do you want to tell one too, or do you want to? Yeah.
Do you want to start?
All right. Wait, so we're gonna change the order a little bit to break up Anna and Neko.
Sonia family.
Yeah, they signed up already.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else want to be on the list? Israel Stories, you can also sign up if you're inspired while we're going. Okay, so the way Moth events work, everyone, the way Moth events usually work is there's 2-minute versions and 5-minute versions. We're going to do a 5-minute version. So all the stories are 5 minutes. The idea is they're true stories and they're heartfelt. So up here, you'll see when you come up here, there's a timer, and you're going to have to set it yourself. It's pretty easy to do. You click down the menu and set it for 5 minutes. At the end, you're going to hear something. Wait. Okay, which is going to be your cue, either to be done or to wrap up in like 15 seconds, and that's fine. After that, we pull you off with the hook. And then when you're done, you'll have to click. So the way it's an interface like this, and you click down, and then so that's a test. But you would select 5 minutes, and then you would turn the alarm off, and then for the next person, you'll just click back to timer, and then they'll set it for 5 minutes, and then that's how the timer works. Okay, without any further ado, the first person is Claudia. I can even do it for you. Look.
Are we doing this together or are you doing this?
Kind of.
Okay.
All right. All right. Ready?
Yes.
All right.
So I'm going to let Claudia speak.
I hate public speaking, by the way. Okay, so when when I graduated college, I had majored in psychology, and I had returned to my dysfunctional family after graduation. I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know professionally. I just knew that I did not want to be in New Haven, Connecticut with my family. So I did some research, and I found out about these programs to Israel, and one of them was called Shirut La'am, and I really was interested in that, where you go to Israel, and for 3 months you're learning in an Ulpan, and then afterwards they place you in an agency or in the profession of your interest, and they're supposed to like sort of guide you and coach you and whatever. So I was a very sheltered child. I grew up going to a yeshiva. I sort of was very shy, and deciding to go to Israel was a big deal for me. It was actually quite terrifying. So I am very proud of myself looking back that I did that, and also, well, I don't want to jump ahead. So anyway, so I went to Israel, and I remember in my jet lag, delirium, my panic attacks, the first couple of nights we spent in Tel Aviv, I was a nervous wreck. And I remember coming into the group, and we had to all sit in a circle, and this is where we were going to be introduced to the whole group who were on the Shirut La'am program. And I remember the first time, that's where I saw Darren. And he was sitting in the circle, and I was scoping out who was in the group with me. And there was like some Russian guy who looked like he was from the mafia, and like he was 53. And then there was like some really like weird looking people. Anyway, so
No offense.
Darren was sitting there with his curly hair and this mustache that went all like it was like a Mod Squad mustache, and he had a very friendly face and these cute skinny legs. And anyway,
Should I carry on from here? Should I talk a little bit?
yeah, go ahead.
All right, so, wow. So I spent most, huh? Yeah. So I spent most of my teenage years in England in a Zionist youth movement called Hanad Zioni. And I was not only a kid in the movement, but I was also a madrich in the movement. And it was a very kind of formative and important part of my life at that time. And we were a pretty radical group, if you like. We were not affiliated. We weren't like B'nai Akiva. We weren't quite as left-wing as Hashomer, but we were a Chalutzik Zionist youth movement, which meant that we were affiliated to the kibbutz movement in Israel. And so I actually, through college, I took tours to Israel as a madrich, and we had both kind of the touring tours, and we had another program called Machanei Avodah, which is where you take kids to a kibbutz, and they work on a kibbutz for like 6 weeks, and then you do some touring, so I did a bunch of that. And then when I finished and graduated college, I was actually seriously contemplating making Aliyah. And Sharut La'am seemed like a program that would really help me assimilate. It had an ulpan, and there was some working and stuff like that. And so it seemed like the right program for me at the time. And yeah, and I remember we met in Tel Aviv in this hotel, and it was one of these very typical kind of campy, ice-breaking programs and things like that. And I remember meeting Claudia there, and then, we went to Tiberias to a Merkaz Klita. We were there for 6 months. And
3 months.
3 months. Seemed like 6 months. Yeah, it seemed like 6.
So
Let's just say language was not one of my... languages were not one of my stronger suits, so my Hebrew was pretty... But you could absolutely say whatever you
So
want.
there were 2 Ulpan classes, and I was in the advanced, and Darren
Of course she was.
And Darren was in the...
Not in the advanced.
No.
Kind of remedial.
But somehow he hobnobbed with the teacher, and he got switched into my class. And
What a guy.
And then he continued to cheat off of my paper and my
stay in
test
this class.
the whole time.
So I guess the rest is history. That's where we met, and the program was great, and there's plenty of tiulim, and 30 odd years later, we're still
3 kids.
3 kids, and in America. Not why I didn't make Aliyah is for the next month. Thank you.
Next is Emily.
I also am not big on public speaking, so bear with me.
All right, ready?
I'm just going to stand over here. Okay, hi everybody. When I was asked to speak, the first thing that came to mind was about my son, Yonatan, who is now an Israeli citizen. And after high school, he said, I want to go to Israel for the year. He's not a yeshiva type of guy. So we decided on Bar Ilan, and the school year started. And then in October, thank God for WhatsApp video chat, he tells me, I love it here, I'm not coming home. So I said, oh my God, you gotta come home. You're a happy camper, you could have gone to UCLA, you would say, I love LA, I'm not coming home. Come home, finish college, and then if you still love it, you'll know Israel's for you. He said, okay. He came home, he was so gung-ho, he only took 2 more years to finish college, and he goes, I'm gonna go to Israel. You know what? I'll be home for a year, and I'll be home for a year, make some money, see all my friends, see the family, get it out of my system, I'll go to Israel. Of course, that's when COVID hit. He's home for spring break, which lasted forever. We're all locked up together 24 hours a day, and after a couple months, he goes, I've seen everybody all the time now. I gotta go. I gotta go. I found a great program. This is program Garin Zabar, which is a great program for those of you who don't know. they have kids his age, kids, 20-year-olds who go together as a group. They have a cohort. They want to make Aliyah. They want to do service in the IDF. And he goes, and here he is. He's leaving during the height of the pandemic, summer 2020, going across the planet. He's going to be in bidud, isolation, 2 weeks straight by himself. He's going to go serve in the army, and he winds up on a kibbutz Alamim, 1.8 miles from Gaza. I am freaking out. Okay, he goes, he makes Aliyah. He's doing all right. He's a happy camper, as I said. And, there's a pandemic going on. Israel's shut down. We can't see him, but thank God for WhatsApp, video chat, and everything. They start opening up Smidge, and they were like parents of lone soldiers. He's now a lone soldier. He's serving as a paratrooper. There's no screens. I have no idea what the time is, by the way. I can keep talking, but can we go? You have to get so much paperwork filled out. Are you really Jewish? Are you really related? Get it validated, notarized, everything, and then everything's backlogged. Are we going to be able to get there in time for his Masa Kumta when he finishes his training? Masa Kumta, they do like a 60-kilometer hike, and they graduate training, and they go into active service. He schleps his mashakitash, his social worker, to come with him to try and get the paperwork. And she yells at them, "What do you mean you're not going to approve a lone soldier's family to come to Israel? They sent their son. They lay down his life. You got to let him go." We get the approval. We go. We have to go into bidud until you get approval. Of course, we don't know Hebrew. They're not calling us. My friend is dropping us food because we're in isolation. Lo and behold, it's my son. He came a day early. It was magical. And but the point of the story is we get to go to his Masa Kumta, and it's at Ammunition Hill. And if you know anything about Ammunition Hill, it was a decisive battle during the Six-Day War, which helped reunite Yerushalayim. And we're at the ceremony, and it's a hot Israeli day. It's amazing. We're there, and confession, every time I hear Hatikva, it brings tears to my eyes, like to know that we have this land of ours. But here I am in Israel, Yerushalayim, this place that is so meaningful. My son is with all these other people who are laying down their lives. There are all these Israeli flags flying, and they play the Hatikva at the end of the ceremony. I can't even begin to tell you what it felt like to hear that and see that, how, it's very easy to hear the Hatikva. So nice, usually we sit here in America, I'll speak for myself, it's very easy to take it for granted. But to see all these people who are giving of themselves to lay down their lives and to really walk the walk was very inspiring. So that's what I wanted to share with you when I was asked. And thank God he's doing well. He's done with his service. He's about to do his reserves for a couple of days of training. Thank you, and
you're next. Probably so for everyone else who's back up here, it's probably a good idea to sort of like just put your finger on the pad. So if you want to keep track of the time, yeah. Ready?
You're Jonathan. I have a Jonathan too. Yeah, he spoke to our kids.
Ready?
Ready. So, Chag Sameach, everyone, and Erev Tov. I don't know how many of you know, but I was born in Brazil. And not only in Brazil, but with a very Zionist family. So I would say that my Zionism was from birth. And more than that, it's because of my Bobby, the same Bobby that inspired me to do the Bobby's Kitchen here, that same Bobby. She was the president of the WITSO group, Hannah Senesh. WITSO is the World Women's Organization. She was very proud and worked tirelessly to raise money for Israel. She made sure that I knew what she did, why she did it, how she did it, how hard it was to do it. Many times she took me with her on her rounds of visiting families and getting the the book signed and all of that. And she also made sure that I knew who Hannah Senesh was, a hero of Israel who volunteered to parachute behind enemy lines in Hungary during World War II. So just for the start, like the standards for Zionism in my family, not only by the work that I saw doing, but also by the heroes that my family admired, was like here. And one more thing I remember from my grandma, her birthday is on Yom Kippur. So the break the fast is always in her house. The whole family would come, and it would be jubilant because we were not only breaking the fast, we were celebrating her birthday. 1973 was a very somber day. The break the fast was very sad. I remember when the family learned about the war that just started in Israel. And I remember my uncle saying that he wanted to volunteer to go as a doctor to serve in Israel. I also remember my grandma saying that the most exciting moment of her life was when Menachem Begin came to Porto Alegre to fundraise, and she shook his hand. It was like, she always would say that. So years later, when I finally went to Israel, when I stepped foot in Israel, and no one else in my family had done that before me, I thought about my grandma. Many years later, Neko and I announced to the family that we are making Aliyah. We're getting married. I was 19, Neko was 21, and we announced to our family that we're making Aliyah. My parents were like, they freaked out, and my answer to them was, what did you expect? Like, you raised the Zionists, now you don't want me to make Aliyah. So that was the end of the discussion. So Neko and I, on December 9th, in 1982, 2 days before Hanukkah that year, we got married. And it was the first wedding outdoors in my hometown. So my mom had to really fight the board of our synagogue because they wouldn't allow the chuppah to leave the synagogue to go somewhere else. They were like, it's a kosher chuppah, you can take it out from here. But we wanted to get married outdoors, and we did. And the local Jewish newspaper published an article about us saying, Anna and Neko got married kibbutz style. And everybody spoke about that for a long time. I did not wear a white dress, and Neko did not wear a tux. We both actually we didn't talk about it, but we made the same choice. We both wear like linen outfits with embroidery, and we looked like Rikudei Yam, folk dancers, which we actually danced in our wedding. There was our whole folk dance team was there with us. When I arrived to Israel, it took, I didn't know Hebrew, and I wanted to become a teacher in Israel. So I went to learn in a ulpan in Jerusalem, which was far away from where I lived, and I needed to take 2 buses to get there. And when I got to the bus station, that's what? That's it?
You got 15 more seconds.
15 more seconds. I went to the bus station, and I sat in line, and the bus came. Everybody mounted on the bus. I was the first in line, but everybody mounted. The door shut. The driver said, sorry, next time. So I came to my ulpan class late and told my teacher what happened, that I was the first, and I was in line, and the first word that I learned in Hebrew was, Anna, here in Israel, you have to learn marpek, marpek, marpekim. You have to use your elbows.
I put myself next because I didn't want to go first or I didn't want to go last, but I'm going to take rabbinic privilege and just tell a joke based on a bus stop. There's a new immigrant to America, a Jewish immigrant, and he's going to fill out some paperwork, and his social worker says, "So, how's your English doing?" And he says, "Fine." He says, "Give me a word that I'll spell it for you." He says, "Okay, cultivate." And the guy thinks for a second. He says, "Cultivate." Cultivate. He says, "Oh, that's very good." He says, "Can you use the sentence?" He said, "Yeah. I was waiting for a bus to come here. It was to cultivate, so I took a taxi." This is my story, and I get 5 minutes. Because I have rabbinic privilege. So we got married, my wife and I, on October 10th, 2010. And 2 days later, we moved to Israel for my year in rabbinical school, which if anyone else is planning a wedding, I don't recommend moving to a foreign country the day after you get married, 2 days after you get married. And it was a challenging year, and I'd been to Israel many, many times, but I'd never been there to live. And it was a wonderful year, but also a challenging year. And one of the things I remember most about the year is that for Hanukkah break, and that's, because you're on the Jewish calendar, and it's rabbinical schools, on Hanukkah break, lots of people, most of us were young couples in rabbinical school, we go places, and some people traveled in Israel, some people went to different places. Phyllis and I went to Amsterdam, which is a city that we absolutely love, and we had been there before as well, and we thought, we're just going to get away. And let me tell you, the vibe shift between Jerusalem in January and Amsterdam, that's a pretty intense vibe shift. They're very, very different kinds of cities. And so we got there, and we had rented an Airbnb, this beautiful, beautiful apartment. And the guy who owned the Airbnb, I'm going to call him Saeed, I don't remember that was his name, he was an Arab guy. And we came to the apartment. It's just sort of really, really beautiful apartment. He has an amazing, amazing, like voluminous collection of Liza Minnelli records. It's just a beautifully appointed apartment. And I got the sense from my 5-minute conversation with Saeed, who was renting us his apartment for the week, that he, like us, was in Amsterdam because he was getting a break from the Middle East. That was just the vibe that I got. I don't know that he was Palestinian, I don't know where he was from, but he was a Muslim guy, he was living in Amsterdam, he was not from Amsterdam, and the vibe I got was like, he needed out of the Middle East. And that may have been the vibe he got from Phyllis and I at that moment as well. And so he said, he was renting us his apartment, and he said that he was going to be staying with his cousin for a week, and then his cousin came, and he was this gorgeous Nigerian man who was his cousin, and they spent a wonderful, I hope, romantic week together. And I didn't see him again until the end of the week. And something that happened at the end of the week was it was one of our last nights there. It had snowed, and in some of the fresh snow on the way back from dinner, we saw someone had written a Magen David in the snow with something in Dutch that I didn't know what it was, and some other kind of weird symbols. And it was late at night, and we were walking along, and we saw it, and we were like, whatever that means, it can't be good. Like, whatever it means, that can't be good. And we had no idea what it meant. And so, it was our last night there, and we were giving the keys back to the guy. And so we asked Saeed, hey, we saw this thing. Do you have any idea what it is? And he said, oh, yeah. He rolled his eyes. He said, there's these two Dutch soccer teams, and one Dutch soccer team, as an insult, told to the fans of the other Dutch soccer team, oh, you guys are the Jews. And so then that Dutch soccer team kind of took on the identity themselves, and they were like, yeah, we're the fucking Jews, man. And that's what he explained to us. And I was like, yep, you're right. It was like nothing good. It was like this. It was like nothing good. And Saeed we looked at each other, and like we took our little Chanukiah off of his coffee table, because we've been lighting Chanukiah thing. And we said, thank you so much for your wonderful apartment. And we left. And we went to the airport that night, and I remember, and I had felt this way a little bit when we first left Yerushalayim, or first left from Ben Gurion. But then as we were flying back, and as we touched down, and I looked out, and I saw just not the snow, and I saw no Christmas lights, and I saw just the beautiful, endless beige, I felt very, very strongly and very acutely that I am home now and I am safe again. I'm home now and I'd say I'm safe again. And I had never felt quite that way landing in Israel before. I've been to Israel many, many times before and since, but I can still remember exactly how that felt. When we landed from cold Amsterdam into warm Yerushalayim. Okay, next I have Gary Tracton.
Go ahead. Sure, put me after the professional, right? It's like hard act to follow. So, like Claudia, I also went to yeshiva. As a matter of fact, we went to the same yeshiva. I was like many years ahead of her, but as you can tell. And then I got expelled from Yeshiva University High School. And I'm not just bragging. I'm telling you this because it actually affects the story a little bit here. So I've been to it, I think, 5 times. My first time was in 1977, December of 1977. I was a second-year law student. The director of Hillel there, Rabbi Judah Mintz, was organizing a trip through the Jewish Agency, and the Jewish Agency, to promote Aliyah, heavily subsidized this trip. So this was like 3 weeks, all your transportation, all your meals, and your hotel was like $1,500. It was like something really ridiculous. But so off we go. Now, the timing is very important because we were there in December of 77, and Sadat visited in November of 77. And this was a major shift in the whole outlook of anybody in Israel, because it had always been all the Arab countries were going to push Israel into the sea. They were all enemies. It wasn't that many years since you had the 73 war with Egypt. So we were coming at a very momentous time. So we get to Israel. There were people. Rabbi Mitz really wanted to he just wanted to fill a trip. So we had 14-year-olds and we had 82-year-olds, all Hillel, right? It's like, but we filled it up. And so we go and we're going to Tel Aviv to our first hotel, and on our way, I remember there was a square, I don't know which one it was, and people were excited. They were banging conga drums and fiery signs of shalom and salam, and it was just so celebratory. It was just unbelievable. And then we get to our hotel, and we check in our bags. Now, I told you how cheap this was. Well, you get what you pay for, right? So this was a part of I'm sure there's nowhere near the beach now in Tel Aviv, which is not pretty fancy. But back then, there were seedy sections near the beach. And our hotel was in a pretty seedy section. And we check in, and a few guys, we get together. We say, okay, let's walk the neighborhood. Let's see what's going on. Our first time in Israel. Eretz Yisrael, right? The Kedushat Yisrael, right? The holiness of Israel. Remember, I told you about the way I was brought up. It's because the sense of Israel is something that would be a holy land, right? And so I'm ready to walk around this holy place. And we're taking a walk around the neighborhood, and a woman about my age, I think I was 24, comes up and with her bleach blonde hair, and she starts talking to me in French. And I'm trying to explain to her I don't speak French. I'm asking her if she wants to. Oh boy, I had so much more. But I'm trying to explain to her, in Hebrew, in English, try and talk English. She's just very frustrated. We're not communicating at all. And so she finally just stops in frustration, cocks her head off to the side, and he goes, "Fucky, fucky." Welcome to the Holy Land. I don't have too much time, but the trip, I do want to say a couple more things about the trip. One is, it's really nice on your first trip to really see sort of the underbelly of Israel in a lot of ways. We were going so cheap. We'd go to hotels, and there'd be no towels there or anything, all right? There was like, they have a rating system, 1 to 5 stars there. I think we were in 1-star or 2-star hotels. I remember one time we went there and we complained. They went and they called the tourist ministry, and so somebody at tourist ministry tells the hotel that they're coming to inspect. The guy puts out the towels, the inspector comes, the inspector leaves, they take away the towels. I swear, you can't make this stuff up. We spent some time in the West Bank, and it was, I guess you could call it pacified, whatever you want. It was easy, it was comfortable. The only place that we were told before we went there that it's going to be a little bit more thoughtful, that there's you're going to feel some tension, was Hebron. And I think we were at the part of Hebron which is now a ghost town now. I think that market area, and that's kind of sad that it's become that way. Over the course of the 3 weeks, that ecstasy that everybody was feeling, the euphoria about this piece, you could tell when you talk to cab drivers or whatever else like that. Now it was like, uh-oh, what now? What does this mean? So all that euphoria in the course of those 3 weeks turned into anxiety. So it was quite a remarkable trip. It was my first trip of 5, and I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it.
Neko.
All right. So, Anna was telling about our Aliyah, but what you probably don't know, that was my second Aliyah. My first Aliyah was when I was a child, and well, I also grew up in a Zionist family. I belong to Habonim. Yes, yeah. So, and I belong to Habonim, a Zionist socialist movement, because of my siblings, my older brother, 11 years older than me, and my sister. And the story is that my brother went to Shnat Achshara, which is a year in Israel, and he decided to stay there when he was 18. He didn't come back. And then my sister in 71, long time ago, she decided to go too. And my parents went to the trip, you know, when they do the trip to Europe, and they went to, and my brother who was in Israel, they visited my brother in Israel, and he convinced them to make Aliyah. And it was in 72, we were ready to make Aliyah. My brother decided to leave Israel by then, and he even came back to Brazil to talk my parents out of making Aliyah. And you can imagine, my brother was my hero. He was 11 years older than me, was my big brother. And he came home and he was talking to my parents, and I wasn't allowed to be in the room, but I stick my ear to the door and I heard everything. And when they came out, I told them I'm not going to Israel. And I was 11, and I was a difficult child. So we did make Aliyah. When we got there, my brother wasn't there. My sister was there, but 6 months after that, she left. And so we went to a Merkaz Klita, to an absorption center in Haifa, in Kiryat Eliezer, down there. Not a very good neighborhood. So it was a tough time for a 11-year-old. The kids in the school weren't very receptive of new immigrants, of Olim Chadashim. So it was kind of tough, but I survived. But again, I was all the time telling my parents, I don't want to be here. My brother said it's not good, I don't want to be here. So you can imagine what a 12-year-old could do. But again, survived, and then we after a few months we left the Merkaz Klita and we went to live in Haifa in a place called Neve Sha'anan, and then I went to a better school and I was better received and I had some friends, and that was 1973. And if you remember, in October 1973, the war started. And one of the things that my brother told my parents that remained in my head, he said, I don't want Neko to go to the army and die. And the war started. And then it was kind of traumatic. But as a kid, I remember the war. I was in a youth movement called Machanot HaOlim, and we would go out. There were blackouts at night in Haifa, and we would go out and paint the headlights of cars and just leave a strip. That's what kids would do. And I remember the sirens, and I remember also in Yom Kippur Day when I really saw people running from the synagogues and running to war. And this was a strong, it still remains in my head. It was a strong feeling. And that made me as a kid more resolute to make my parents' life hell and say, I don't want to stay here. There's war here. And I wouldn't put all the responsibility in this 12-year-old kid, which was me, because my parents in the end decided to go back to Brazil in April 1974. And we went back to Brazil. And so my bar mitzvah was in Brazil already. But the fact is that 8 years after, I went back to the youth movement. I went back to, and I became one of the leaders of the youth movement. That's where we met. And 8 years after that, I ended up making Aliyah again. This time to stay for 23 years. Okay, so that's my story. Thank you.
Okay. Sonia, you're the last person on our list. Does anyone else want to go on the list? Okay, all right, okay.
Is it on?
No.
No? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so my story is maybe a little different because unlike Anna, I was born in Soviet Union. I did not grow in any Zionist family or with any knowledge of what Jewish mean or who Jewish is. And trying to think what connects me to land of Israel, where this connection actually started, I can reflect on a few things in my life. So first, I remember myself as being about 8 years old, red-headed freckled girl, something similar that I look now. I was running from school with excitement to tell my mom that it's such a great thing to be growing up communist, and we had such a great day in school. And then my mom looked at me first time with kind of a grin and said, I'm sorry to tell, but you're not really Russian. And I said, so who am I? She said, you're a Jew. And that first word, that first exposure sounded like a slap in my face. Didn't sound right, didn't say good. It sounded like a curse, like a secret that I have to bury now to the rest of my life, because she also said that you should not tell anyone in school who you are, because that's not safe. So that was my first connection to the Promised Land. I didn't know what Promised Land is and where it is on the map, because again, unlike Anna and Neka, we could not make this luxury to go back and explore. Should we stay there? Should we come back? Because it was one-way ticket if you get the ticket, because many Jews waited for many, many years in line. My second experience with maybe something bigger, let's call it God, was when I graduated from school and I wanted to be a professional pianist. I learned piano for many years, and I knew I hardly have a chance because I'm a Jew. There was only 10 places available, and there was 10 kids who were not Jewish, and they would be accepted no matter what their grade are. But I still did my all exams. I got straight A's. I was a perfect student. And here I am sitting in the auditorium listening for grades to be announced. And I start counting 1, 2, 3, 4. My heart pounds, goes back and forth. When I get to 8, there is still hope. And then 9, 10, and my heart stops because I know I'm not there. And then something happens, because the only thing that I remember from my Jewish childhood that my grandmother used to sing before the bed a few words, And when I asked her what this word were, she said, like, just say it. Someday you'll see a miracle. And I remember those words, and I started to whisper them. Shema Israel. I only knew 4 words. And I don't know how much time passed since then, but suddenly I hear number 11 and my name. So they made number 11, they made an extra spot just for me, and I said, wow, I am a Jew. I can do miracles. The third one, maybe already in the land of Israel, that was really waking up call when I just made Aliyah with my family. It was spring, it was Passover time, which I had no idea about. And I got out, it was a spring, beautiful day, and I saw my neighbor burning crumbs outside the house, burning something, I didn't know what it was. And I tried to make friendly, I didn't really speak Hebrew, yes, like he spoke a little Russian, like, aren't you too old to play with fire? And he looked at me like that, and it's like, all those Russians, they don't know anything. And eventually he said, I'm burning chametz. I was like, chametz? What is chametz? Like, why are you burning bread? I was so offended because I grew up in the home when every crumb of bread was vanished. It was a pressure. And someone who is burning it, like, give it to the birds. Maybe it's better way. He looked at me again and said, like, he didn't actually say anything. He just nodded his head and called me Russian again, not in a nice word. And I said, like, what? And this Russian slapped me in the face like the word Jew back in my childhood. And I said, this is it. I have to stop and try to connect to where I am and what I'm doing right here. So I'm doing a little better. I'm a Jewish educator now, so many years later. I was so happy to celebrate this significant event yesterday, 75 years, Mazal Tov Israel, and I'm so proud to be part of this land.
Okay, we have 2 extra storytellers who were inspired, which is great. Now is the last time when I'm going to accept new storytellers. Anyone else want to tell a story? Anyone else? Okay, so we'll have Shane, and then we'll have Rob, and then we'll be done. Coming up. Ready? Go.
So, July 2017, I think it was June. That was the summer when the first time when I went to Israel on birthright. During that time, prior to the trip, I was thinking about it. I was imagining what it would be like, because I basically never gone outside the U.S. except for like Mexico and Canada. I never been across the globe. And people were telling me about it, and they were telling me how much fun it would be, how much of a spiritual connection I would feel. And the time finally came when I was at the airport, and and it's like, I'll be there soon, you know. And I went to like a lot of beautiful places: Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa. We went to this city hall, I believe is where it was, where we saw the actual room where the Declaration of the State of Israel was signed. Also, as long as we were there, I went with my friend, who was also the group leader at the time. We walked to Tel Aviv, where my great aunt and uncle lived, by the name of Buma and Etcha. And so I saw the building where they lived, and then on the flight back, I just felt so nostalgic. See, here's the thing about when going on some trips, you don't really have an appreciation for it until after you leave. And when I left, it really kind of like did a number on me, and that number stayed for like um, some days or some weeks after I came back. I had promised my grandmother that I would try to stop at a forest where like her mother, where like her mother's mother was given like a forest of 10,000 trees. We didn't get to stop there because also what was going on about with the attacks. So unfortunately we weren't able to go. But I did make it clear to my friend and the other group leader that I did promise my grandmother, and even though I didn't get to go, and even though she's not here with me, I am still trying to hopefully this trip to Israel I will be able to make that on pilgrimage, and I am looking forward to going back to Israel if we do go summer of 24. I will be amongst the first people to sign up. And let me tell you this, the first night of Israel, when I woke up early in the morning, I had to realize, okay, I'm not close to home anymore. So that way, in case I get sick or something, I can't just call my mom to come pick me up. So basically, I was on my own. I did drink the water, and the water where I drank it from, it was delicious. It was cold. I just couldn't get enough of it. I thought I would get sick the next day because that's what I heard. But I fell asleep without any pain whatsoever.
Rob, before you come up, just wait 1 second. I want to say one or two things. Again, this is rabbinic prerogative. I'm not on the timer. It's also not a story, but I think it's very important that we end with stories. I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped make this whole series happen, to Anna and to Gary and to Barbara, who I believe is watching, and of course to all of our speakers. There were 6 in all. We had 6 of these events, and I think it was consistently rich and important and substantive, and I feel personally very grateful to be part of a community where that can happen. And so kol hakavod to all of my committee, and also thank you to everyone who made the barbecue happen today, Darren and John, and Linda, and all the kids who literally helped cook the food with their own hands, and thank you to everyone who made that happen. And the last thing I want to say is about storytelling, which, as all of you in the room know, is something that's very important and very precious to me, sort of as a mode of expression and as a way of connecting. And I want to share something about the Haggadah, and about the word Haggadah. So the Haggadah, which is the book we used for the Seder, as most of you in the room, hopefully all of you in the room know, there's a question about where that word comes from. What's the root of the word Haggadah? And there's 2 options. The first option is that it could come from the root Nun Gimel Daled, Lahagid, like the Magid section of the Haggadah. A Magid is a storyteller. So Haggadah could be from Lahagid, Magid, right, to tell a story. Or, and the beauty is we don't necessarily have to choose, or, the root of the word Haggadah, like the word Agadah, might be from the root Aleph Gimel Daled, not not Nun Gimel Dalet, but Aleph Gimel Dalet, which means a web or a knot. An Agadah or a Haggadah is a web or a knot that binds. And the reason why Agadah, which is rabbinic storytelling, is called Agadah is not because it's lehagid, that they're telling it to you. No. It's because it binds you like a web. And the more you twist and the more you turn, the closer actually you get. And there's the theme of the whole series could have been My Promised Land. There's nothing perfect necessarily or simple about a promised land, but the goal of the series, and the reason why I think it's very important that we end not with a rabbi spiel, but with a story, is that stories really bind us closer together. And some of the stories we heard tonight were pretty funny. Some of the stories we heard just tonight, were pretty tough, right? But God willing, Baruch Hashem, they should bind us together as a community, and they should bind Jews everywhere together, and they should bind us to our home, wherever we find that home, both here and there, Po V'Sham. So I'd like to invite up Rob to close us out with one more marvelous story. Ready?
So I've had the privilege of spending quite a bit of time over the years in Israel, starting when I was 9 in 1977 with my family, which I remember almost nothing of, except I looked for bottle caps for some reason. Every picture is me looking down because I had this giant bag of bottle caps. For some reason, I wanted to collect bottle caps, and that's pretty much the only. There was somebody else who was talking about important events in '77. I don't remember any of those. But I got to go back, and I was sent there to do research by Medical College of Virginia at Tel Aviv University, and I could tell you a million stories about that. But I want to focus more recently. I've had the privilege in the last 8 months of being there twice, once with my family for my 15-year-old's 13-year-old bar mitzvah because of COVID. And the first story comes from that. We had arrived on, we were going right after Tisha B'Av, and a friend of mine was getting married. His daughter was getting married. And so we decided to make it earlier. And while we were already making it earlier, we said, let's spend Tisha B'Av in Israel, in Yerushalayim. If anybody remembers, there were rockets flying on the Tisha B'Av in Yerushalayim. And so we were picked up, we got a get. My wife thought I was divorcing her, but we got a get, which is the Uber of Israel. And this very nice Muslim gentleman picked us up and moved his prayer carpet from my seat so I could sit down. And we went, and bombs are flying, not in Jerusalem necessarily, but they were flying. And we went to the, what was it called? The Tayelet. So we're overlooking the old city, and they're speaking Hebrew. I have no idea what they're saying, but it seems pretty incredible because we're looking at the old city, and bombs are flying towards us, and we're singing songs about not being scared, and we're scared because there's bombs flying, and it was just one of the most moving moments of my life. We were singing one of my favorite songs, which is Kesher Tzalmod, as bombs are flying at us. When we finished, we called the get again, and the same guy showed up and moved the same prayer shawl away. And we kind of spoke in a broken Hebrew and broken English to him. And as we got out of the cab, he said to us, I hope you have a great stay and welcome to our country. And I thought that was just an amazing, amazing experience. I then got to go back last month. My son did 2 months in Israel with the Lafel School. And they had 3 Shabbats that they weren't, that they could leave, except they're 17, so they can't just leave. They need somebody, and we didn't have anybody. So I decided to fly over for the weekend. And I decided while I was there, I would volunteer. Whatever needed to be done, I would just volunteer. I was hoping to volunteer and do some surgery over there in the dental clinic, which I did for a day, but it was around Purim, so they didn't need me. So I'm on the board of JNF. So I called them up and I said, hey, I want to volunteer. And we went through all these iterations of volunteering. I was focusing on the Gaza envelope at first, and there was all these things, but nobody wanted anybody for Purim. So I ended up finding a place. That didn't work. They found a place for me in the north, in the Galilee, in the middle of no place, and I'm talking like the real middle of no place. It's a group called Lotem, which is a huge group in Israel that helps disabled experience the outdoors. I do a lot of outdoor stuff. I'm the scoutmaster for the largest Shomer Shabbat troop in the United States here in White Plains. So I said, all right, I can go to the middle of no place. In order to get me there, they had to send me 2 pins on a Waze app. One to get me to the road, the dirt road that I had to leave, and the other one to get to the Emek HaShalom, it's called. It's an amazing 40-acre farm where there's usually a family that stayed. Once again, it was Purim, so the family was gone. There were 2 guys that worked there during the day, but at night I was the only one there in the middle of no place. Me and they're not coyotes, they're kind of like coyotes that yell a lot, and the pigs, they had pigs. And it was just really, really incredible. I did whatever they needed. I painted benches a lot, but they usually have these groups of disabled kids, but it was Purim, so no disabled kids. So these Druze kids show up every day, like 100 Druze kids each day, and I became the pita maker for the Druze kids. So I learned how to make pita, and I made pita for the Druze kids. And my time's about to end, but one of the most amazing things that happened there was one morning when I was painting the benches, I was waiting for the paint to dry, and so I had my Talsim to fill in with me, so I decided to daven Shachrit. And the 2 guys that worked there, let me just finish this one story. I promise it'll be quick. The 2 guys that worked there were Chabad. And as I finished davening, I still had my tefillin and talis on. One of the guys drove by, he was like a golf cart, and he drove by and he stopped. And he got out of the golf cart and he raised his fist at me and he yelled like at the top of his lungs, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. And it was one of the most amazing moments in my life, because here I am, some American guy just standing there, and for an Israeli who's born and raised in Israel, he spoke like 3 English words, and for him to be raising his fist at me and saying, Am Yisrael Chai, was perhaps one of the most meaningful moments of my life. So.
So traditionally at Moth events, at the end you sort of vote on a winner. We don't have to do that, but you traditionally sort of go around and you say sort of one more time, like a one-word version of the story. One word to remind everyone what the story was, and we applaud. So Claudia and Darren. Well, like what's the one word that sums up the story?
We're still here.
Love, and we're still here. Emily? Anna?
I'll pick you.
I'll say Hanukkah in Amsterdam. Sonia?
The Wandering of Russian Jew.
Neko?
Teenager.
Gary?
I won't say it.
Shane? And Rob? I'm Yisrael Chai. I'm Yisrael. I'm Yisrael. 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 I'm Yisrael Chai. Hod Avinu Chai. Hod Avinu Chai. Hod Avinu. Hod Avinu. Hod Avinu Chai. Hod Avinu Chai. Hod Avinu Chai. Hod Avinu. Hod Avinu. Hod Avinu Chai. Chag Sameach, everyone.
If anybody has a few minutes, you can help me bring in tables.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody was left there, and I don't know what the...
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Because the tables, I think we're going to put them in